They were built up about that high off the floor, and they had mats on. But there were scenes of occupation before us, and I'm sure it wouldn't have been military personnel unless they were high-ranking, but there were no high-ranking officer around there. Down the line a bit further, there was another camp, because my Dutch-Indonesian mate, he was in that one, Camp 28 I think it was. And also there was a camp of Chinese slave labour, and they said they killed when the war finished, they said that they killed the boss of that camp. So I don't know whether that was right or not.
No.
But they were feeding them bread and they were feeding us rice. And when they found out that, we made a swap. We took their bread and they took our rice.
Yes, yeah. And had you got some warmer clothing at any time, or?
No, much the same, and we had no, we had no blankets to speak of, you know, and you only had the one lot of clothing. You had to sort of sleep in it, and you work in it, and try and wash it and get a bit of the black dust out of it.
Yes.
And the big bath in the camp was one of those community baths, and you got in it and put your dirt in it, and they got someone else's on you, because they never ever emptied it. And once we got control of the camp, we emptied it all out, and there was a steam pipe came from the mine into there, so we were able to get good hot. And
this was the mine that was owned by Taro Aso's family, is it?
Taro Aso's family.
Yes, yeah.
That's the one, and we believe, from what we heard, it hadn't been worked because it was unsafe. And it was unsafe, very unsafe. We had lots of falls, and that Les Cameron, I mentioned to him when I saw him in Sydney, and he and I were working side by side, and when we'd have our bite to eat at 2 in the morning or midday during the day, whichever shift you're on, the powder monkeys would come in and they'd blow the coal, you see.
Yes.
And if you know anything about underground mines, I grew up in a coal mining town. The air gets into the cracks in the rock, the stuff that hasn't fallen, and it will still fall. And they used to employ men called brushers. They used to go and brush everything down in the mines here when I was a kid.
Yes.
But they didn't do that, and you'd be working away and this stuff would fall, and Les got hit with some of these big blocks, all like that they were. And I was next to him, I never got hurt, but he was knocked about a lot, nothing broken. And I sort of grabbed him and hauled him and got him out. And I was saying to Teresa only yesterday about it, you know, I said, I met him on 5 years later on Hurstville Railway Station in Sydney, on the Illawarra line. I was waiting for someone coming off the train, I think my wife, and he was walking over the platform, over the railway bridge, and I spoke to him. I said, remember the time you got under the fall of coal? He said, no, remember it.
Really? Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yes, yeah. Now,
whether he wiped it out of his head or what, but that's as true as I sit here, that's what he said, and that's what happened.
Yes, yeah. Now, was there any medical support to that, in that camp?
Any
medical support? Any
we had
doctors?
We had a young Dutch doctor there. He came from somewhere else. Some fellas came into that camp from somewhere else. I don't know just where they came from, and I don't think I ever remembered his name, but I think Dr. McSweeney was there, the young English bloke. He was there, and Squadron Leader McCarthy out of the RAF.
Oh yes.
He was the boss of the camp.
Yes.
Yeah. He was our boss.
Yes. Now, this is a difficult one. What was the worst experience that you had as a prisoner of war?
Well, the worst beatings, I'll put it that way, the worst thing was we were going to be killed there in that camp. We found that out, but we didn't know that until after the war was over. Was at Kobe, at Takatora Mishi. This Sam, Big Sambo we called him, is a big black man from the Dutch Guiana in South America,
Mm.
and he was part of the Dutch army. He was a big Amazon Negro type.
Mm.
He was a big man too.
Mm.
Every time he went for a shower, everyone rushed out to have a look.
I think you're disgusting.
He was big all over. But that's true.
Yeah.
But he used to laugh, had a great mouthful of white teeth, and everything was a joke to him, and
Yeah.
even when they were battering him, you know, before that major incident, they used to, one fellow there, Nishikawa, he was a mongrel of a bloke, he had this arm was stiff, evidently from a conflict in China, and he used to salute and do everything left-handed. He had a little ball-peen hammer, and he used to stand this big bloke, the fellow, and crumble, meaning black, you know, in a nasty way, and he'd smack him on the temple with it, crack, crack, until he'd go down, then he'd boot him until he got up again, and they'd knock him unconscious like that. Must have addled his brain.
Yeah.
They victimised him.
Yes.
But anyhow, he did a stupid thing. The Japanese tossed out some of their old raincoats. They had a raincoat and it was holes in it, no buttons on, and you could shoot peas through them, but a bit of a breakwind, so they issued us with one each. There's an old Dutch gentleman there. He wasn't a military bloke or anything. They just grabbed anyone and sent them off if they were white. So he finished up there with us. And this bloke sold his coat to the Jap civilians for food, and he also took old Pop Borgen's coat as well, and sold it. I think it was either him or Van Bemmel, but I think it was Pop Borgen. They were both old fellas. But anyhow, it was an old white Dutch fellow. And anyhow, when they did a count, 2 coats were missing, those 2, and anyhow they nailed him because of, you know, they wanted to inflict as much pain on him as possible. But they were doing it to the old bloke as well, and they stood us on that parade ground for 7 hours in the snow and the ice, from 6 in the evening till 1 o'clock the next morning, 7 hours, and they beat us one row after another with the buckle into their leather belts. In the end, they were completely exhausted. They were glad it was over.
Yes.
So were we.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
we were hammered. We had skin off us everywhere.
Yes.
No major injuries, no eye injuries, because and you couldn't turn your collar up. You know, we had these old wooden overcoats as well, which they gave us there, but they took them away from us as soon as the cold weather was over. You sat on those, you get a splinter in the backside, they were that rough.
Yes.
Anyhow, you couldn't turn your collar up, and they just went along row after row after row, and the officer that came up was a junior officer. Captain Patterson's delegated him the pleasing duty of being the officer on the parade, and he had to stay and get beaten up with us. And that bloke, you'll probably know his name when I mention it, Doug Lush.
Yes.
Victorian.
Yes.
Lieutenant Lush.
Still in Melbourne.
Yeah, he's rung me up and I sent him a fair bit of information. He's writing a story.
Yeah, just hold it for a second. Now, you just had mentioned Doug Lush to me, and you were just telling me about his sporting prowess.
Yes, he was, before the war, it was known that he was Victorian hurdling champion.
Yes.
And he was a good Aussie rules player. He was a tall, rangy sort of a bloke, but got a lopsided grin, but a hell of a good bloke. He was 8 Div Sigs.
Yes.
And we got on well with him, but he and Mr. Trumbull and Rusty Crane died, I think. He was one of the young lieutenants, he died. But the Dutch officer, Captain Wise, I never see a bloke with more guts in all my life than that fella.
Really?
Tall, skinny old fella. And they used to bat the hell out of him too. He was a gentleman. But anyhow, but he was the bloke on parade that night, Lush, and he got the bashing the same as us. Every time we got a belt, he got one as well.
Yes.
But he was using some unseemly language towards us. I can remember that.
Yes.
But anyway, we had a bit of a laugh the next day when we had a look at one another. We thought, "Did you've been 15 round with Joe Louis? Did you win or lose? You know,
Yes.
all this sort of stupid stuff."